Hello. Autofocus expansion implementation via firmware, back button autofocus, and touchscreen on the X-H1 over that of the X-T2. And this is also good news in one aspect for X-T2 users and X-Pro 2 users, is that in testing, everybody's noticed that the X-H1 and going back and forth between like low contrast scenes and low light is better, superior on the X-H1 as opposed to the X-T2. But this is due to firmware, and let me read you the quote specifically, is that the fastest autofocus speed has not changed. What has changed is the area that phase detect autofocus can cover. The new algorithms help the photographer to accurately capture the scene that they wanted to capture. And there's a link on FujifilmX.com on development story number 6. Immediately you notice that autofocus in low light and all conditions, specifically, noticeably so, and continuous, is superior on the X-H1 as opposed to the X-T2, which this means that since it is strictly firmware based, that the X-T2 can and likely will get this update so that it will have the faster autofocus of the X-H1. What the X-T2 obviously is not going to get, that is part of one of the many countless wonderful aspects, which I will list in an upcoming video as well as the full review on the X-H1, is autofocus implementation as a whole. So we have faster autofocus due to the 5 segmenting. There's actually charts on the link, the 5 segmenting of the autofocus so that it is able to determine faster acquisition for both single and continuous autofocus track on the X-H1 as opposed to the X-Pro 2 and X-T2. So wonderful expansion by Fujifilm in autofocus tracking and acquisition. Specifically also, the one thing that everybody's been asking for, including myself, is the back button autofocus. Absolutely wonderful on the X-H1. It's large, it's in the correct spot. Another thing too, and I mentioned this in other videos, there's 2 aspects of the X-H1 that are just absolutely magical, and nobody that's talking about the X-H1 has really done more than mention it in passing. I don't think anybody's mentioned the fact that there's a leaf spring in the X-H1 shutter release. It's just absolutely incredible. That combined with the 5-point spring attachment of the shutter mechanism inside the chassis of the X-H1 make this the most stealthy mechanical shutter and electronic front curtain shutter of any. Absolutely unbelievable. I'm going to use the word orgasmically wonderful. So quiet, so no shock at all. Incredible. Anyway, also to the touchscreen implementation, in addition to the back button autofocus, as well as the improved 5 segmenting, improved algorithms of autofocus tracking and acquisition, make the X-H1, a huge step up from the X-Pro 2 and X-T2 for autofocus tracking. Also, too, I don't actually have to take my face away, and you'll test this when you mess with the camera in store, is that I'm actually able to drag my thumb, whether you're right eye dominant or left eye dominant. You can actually choose the autofocus, the touch sensitivity area, either the entire LCD screen, the right segment, the left segment, the bottom left corner, the bottom right corner, so on and so forth. You're able to choose the area of sensitivity for checking. Right now I'm actually dragging my thumb across the back of the LCD screen, whether in single point or in a zone. Let me actually choose a zone and drag my zone around. It is just wonderful. Lag is minimal. As far as dragging, like if I take a shot and drag my oh my god. When I actually tested this feature on the Canon M5 when it came out last year, I may have made a video. It's like, oh my god, I hope to god Fujifilm sticks this in their camera. This would be so incredible. Just so happy with this. Well, the joystick also too, I need to mention this as far as autofocus, since the actual joystick, or what Fujifilm calls the focus lever, it's a joystick, alright, sticks out more on the X-H1 than it does on the X-T2. You can't see it here, but the actual joystick does protrude further from the back of the camera, which is wonderful. For actually quickly finding it with your face in the back of the camera, finding it, so to say, or actually having a relief, so you don't actually have to dig in as deep to the back of the camera. You're actually able to remove that point of potential shake, which is a really intelligent design idea from Fujifilm, that you're actually able to bring your thumb back away from the focus lever, or the joystick as it should be called. You're actually able to induce less shake in the camera. Like as soon as I take a shot, I immediately drag if I want to actually bring my autofocus area, whether in single point or in multi or in zone mode. I call it multi, but Fujifilm calls it zone mode. Immediately, there's no lag after I've taken one shot to immediately drag my autofocus point somewhere else. It's just incredible. So those three things, actually those four things: the joystick, the back button autofocus on the X-H1, the touchscreen implementation, and the improved 5 segmenting of the phase detect algorithm for actually how it processes tracking and acquisition. So absolutely wonderful. This is just, oh, the back button autofocus and the touchscreen alone is just I'm having one of those moments, because I've got about 10,000 shots currently through the X-H1, roughly 10,000. I'm about to go out to the wildlife refuge with it, and then also take it downtown for more street shooting. I've been beating the hell out of this camera, proverbially speaking. I've also even cleaned the sensor on it. Someone used this camera before I did, and I don't know what they did, but the sensor had a big dirty spot on it. So I've already cleaned the IBIS sensor, and I've already made a video on how to clean the IBIS sensor on the Fujifilm X-H1. This camera is just an absolute frigging dreamboat. That's not fanboy talk. I don't need IBIS. The one thing that everybody keeps talking about, IBIS, Fuji X-H1, IBIS. Well, that's wonderful, you know. I know how important IBIS is for video. IBIS, X-H1, IBIS. There are 1,000, not literally, 1,000 reasons why I love the hell out of the X-H1. Love the hell out of it, far more than I even thought I would, actually going over all this feature specifications and numbers and whatnot. And that has nothing to do with IBIS. I've never needed IBIS, and I still don't. It's incredibly useful for video, and it is useful for photography. There's no denying that, but I don't actually love this camera because of IBIS. You know, it's wonderful. I did buy it partially because it has IBIS for video use, which, you know, I make a lot of videos. They're certainly not high production value videos, but I wanted to have an IBIS stabilized camera for making, you know, little walk around videos. The ergonomics, the touchscreen, the shutter release, the 5-point suspended shutter mechanism, which is so incredibly quiet. The autofocus point selection, the touchscreen autofocus point selection, back button autofocus, improved algorithm for better autofocus tracking and acquisition, on and on and on and on. Oh, there's only one downside of the X-H1, and I knew this would be the case. It's not really a downside. It could be improved in firmware, is that I've had a lot of time on the X-H1, more so than anybody else that's been reviewing them, and I can tell you that it's right at about 25 or 30% more battery chomping on the X-H1 as opposed to the X-T2. They both use the exact same batteries. By the way, if you stick the older battery in the X-H1, it will tell you when you're turning the camera on, hey, you're sticking an older battery in me. It does. It comes up with a little screen that says, you're using the older battery. Which is, the X-T2 doesn't do that. But about 25-30% more chewing on battery as far as drain time, and that's with IBIS in shooting mode only, which means not continuous. Continuous is obviously eating up more of the power. I'm not talking about actual conservative use of stabilization, because I was using it in shooting only, which means the IBIS sensor is only engaging in the last fraction of a second taking the shot. So I'm talking about conservative power use, also with the viewfinder set to its conservative mode, where the EVF and the LCD are off completely until I put my face up to the EVF. So this is conservative power usage. It's still about 25-30% more battery drain faster than the X-T2 as a baseline. So love the hell out of the X-H1. Fujifilm is going to sell the hell and piss out of this camera. So on the ergonomics too. I just go on and on. Oh, I love this camera so much. It has nothing to do with IBIS. Everybody's making a video about the X-H1. IBIS. Well, that's wonderful. Let me tell you the 1,000 reasons of why I love the X-H1 that have nothing to do with IBIS. Touchscreen, back button autofocus, ergonomics, The leaf shutter release, the 5-point spring stabilizer. Oh my God, there's no shutter shock on this thing, huh? Talk about for you know, an event, a nice quiet event like an orchestra or a wedding. This thing in mechanical shutter. Now the XT2 is really quiet. Okay, mechanical shutter, cut relative to say this beast, this obnoxious beast. Boom, boom, boom goes the shutter. The XT2 is infinitely quiet. More quiet than, say, a Nikon, for example, right? In mechanical shutter. But the X-H1 makes the XT2 sound like a Nikon by comparison. It's so stealthy, so quiet, so little shock. Oh my God. It's like that. Thank you so much for watching. If you got any questions, let me know. You can always click the link below because I don't have an affiliate link. I don't sell stuff. I'm not pimping shirts and workshops and other nonsense and frou-frou and mugs and caps and bumper stickers, whatever the hell else everybody else is doing. So a small donation like $1 or $2 would always be awesome because I answer emails and phone calls and comments, and I do a lot of testing. And I've been killing my... It's supposed to be a vacation for me. I actually enjoy testing the X-H1. Can't wait till mine arrives. Like I said, I'm borrowing this one. Can't wait till mine arrives in a few days. But I've had this sucker for 6 days now. Love it! Love it! Fujifilm! Namaste, увидимся, до свидания, пока, and aloha. Word.